himself. God, I thank thee that I'm not as other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as this publican. I fast twice in the week. I give tithes of all that I possess. And the publican, standing far off, would not lift up so much as his eyes unto heaven, but smote on his breast, saying, God, be merciful unto me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone that exalteth himself shall be abased. He that humbleth himself shall be exalted. You know, I wrote down 8 things that Pharisees brag about. You know, he said here in our little reading in Luke that he prayed thus with himself. He didn't pray with other people. He didn't pray with strangers. He's not like other men. He's not an extortioner. He said that he was not an adulterer. He was not like this publican. He said, I fast twice in the week. I pay my tithes. But the publican, he trusted in the Lord. He prayed to God. And he realized his humbleness and attitude was right with God, trusting in him, not in himself. And when you understand this, every one of you in this room, when you understand this principle, when you get down to earth, when you get down in the dust before God, that's when God's going to listen and help you. If you got any cockiness, smart aleckness, any conceit, you're in trouble with God. He said there are 4 kinds of people. There are those who don't honor their parents. There are those who are self-righteous. And he said there are those who are full of vanity and pride. Their eyes are lofty, verse 13. Psalm 10:4, the wicked through the pride of his countenance will not seek after God. God is not in all of his thoughts. The fear of the Lord is to hate evil, pride, and arrogancy. I wish that all of us, including myself, could keep those kind of thoughts in our head and heart, that we are not big shots. We are not the cat's pajamas. We're not Mr. Holy. We are wicked, ungodly people. And we need to stay down in the dust so God could exalt us and bless our lives and use it. When you say, well, I go to the Institute over there at the church. George, he doesn't go, and Sam, he doesn't go, and Mary, she doesn't go, and I'm better than she is. You're a screwball is what you are. And it's nice that you come to the Institute, but that doesn't make you better than anybody else. You understand that? It might enhance your education. It may enhance your learning and understanding of spiritual things, but don't climb on a hypocrite pole and say, I'm so much better than you because I know more about my Bible than you know about your Bible. That is bats in the garret. You're messed up somewhere. So be careful how you treat parents. Be careful how you become self-righteous, which most of us are sort of inclined to be pure in our own eyes. And beware of pride, that loftiness, thinking we're better than somebody else. And don't be cruel. don't be greedy, and don't be bully. I noticed that the world is putting, especially here in Lansing, they're putting on a big push to do away with bullies. In the schools, I don't know all of the rules and regulations. I don't know what the punishment is. Maybe expulsion from school, I don't know. But they're trying to do away with bullies. Big boys picking on little boys, or big girls picking on whoever. And I think it's a pretty good idea. I never cared a thing about persons that be bullies and pushing people around and cramming things down their throat they don't want to take. I've never been that kind of person. Don't want to be neither. I'm going to go to verse 15 and 16. The Horace Lease have two daughters crying, "Give, give." There are three things that are never satisfied, yea, four things that are not, that say not is enough. Four things that say it is not enough. He said the grave, the womb, the barren womb, the earth that is not filled with water, and the fire that saith it is enough. When we say, he's talking about people who, he calls them like two sisters. He said they're both named Give, Give. That's what their name is. He's saying kind of a backhanded remark. All they think about is giving, getting. Please give me, please give me. And these people, when you give them, all they want is more. And he said they're never satisfied. Like the grave is never satisfied. And more and more and more and more and more people every day being placed in the earth. And like the barren womb, a woman, I never really figured all of this out, but women really are involved in having babies. Most of them want a baby, and most of them want more than one baby. And they're always craving for a child. Sarah, she didn't have a child, and she begged Abraham to see to it that she got a child. And of course, that child couldn't come unless God allowed it to come. And so she made some sort of a deal with her handmaid to have a baby, a surrogate baby, and so she'd say, well, it's because she's my handmaid, it'd be my baby. And when that baby was born, Hagar, the mother of that baby, looked down her nose at Sarah, and it got to be a pretty bad situation in that household. And the handmaid was asked to leave. And then she came back when God said, go back and submit yourself to Sarah, and she did. But when that little baby was born, Ishmael, the fight was on. When it started, when that baby was born, the terrible, terrible misunderstanding between Sarah and Hagar. Sure, it was Hagar's baby, but because Hagar was owned as a slave by Sarah, it was her child legally, but it was Hagar's child physically. And when that was finally, God gave Abraham and Sarah a little baby. And when Isaac was born, this child, Ishmael, was about 13 years old, and he kind of made fun and joked about this little baby and put the baby down, so as to speak. And it was just tipped off Sarah so bad that she kicked Hagar and Ishmael right on out forever. It was Rachel. She couldn't have any children. Oh, she said, Jacob, you either give me children or I'm going to die. And I don't understand all I know about that, but I suppose that a woman doesn't really feel like she's a woman until she has a child. I don't know what it is. But he said that something that's never satisfied is a barren womb. The grave and the dry earth that longs for water, even though water keeps flowing and keeps raining and keeps raining, the earth is never quenched. Its thirst for the desire, like a fire, he said, that's greedy to burn everything in its pathway. Solomon said in Ecclesiastes, said, all things are full of labor. Men cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. It's just continuous. I think maybe there's so many lessons in all of this. I wish that I could say to you that you'd think maybe a man that looked at a girly magazine, let's say, and there was nudity there in the magazine, and his eyes would get full of the nudity that was in that magazine. You say, well, that would satisfy that man's eyes. No, it just makes him more aggravated to see more and more and more and more and more and more until he's buying videos and pornography until he cannot satisfy. It's just more and more and more and more and more and more. It just, the eye is never satisfied. You've seen the Niagara Falls. Now you want to see the Victorian Falls. You've seen Yankee Stadium. Now you want to see another ballpark. You see New York. You want to see Chicago, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And all of life is filled up with this crazy, crazy desire. Man is never satisfied. There used to be an advertisement for Chesterfield cigarettes. Said they satisfy. I wonder if they were satisfied so much why they kept buying them all the time. But you know that's not true. But it is true of a cigarette smoker. One of them satisfies for that moment, and you got to have another one for the next moment. And on and on and on until you've smoked up thousands of dollars worth of tobacco. Well, I'm not going to get off on that. I'm going to do one more little lesson here, and I'm going to stop. I'll be right in the middle. You wouldn't believe I've done so much tonight. Maybe I haven't said very much either. But I've been plowing through this chapter. You people that are on the video, it's not that I'm in a hurry. I'd like to, we only have 2 more sessions of work in this institute, and I'd like to finish this year, and seeing they're making a video of all of this, I'd like to have it so that the people that have come every week to do this wouldn't have to come back every week and do the video, and I'm trying to help them and help myself and whatever. But would you go with me to the 17th verse of the 30th chapter of Proverbs? The eye that mocketh his father and despiseth to obey his mother, the ravens of the valley shall pick it out, and the young eagles shall eat it. We're again talking about irreverence to parents and how the curse of God is upon them. They tell me, Brother Armstrong, that when a bird of prey will knock its prey down, whether it be a bird or a small animal, like an eagle would pounce upon the whatever, the first thing it does, takes its bill and pokes her eyes out of that prey. It leaves them almost helpless to know which way to go and what to do to get away from the eagle or the crow or the hawk. The first thing they do is poke their eyes out. I know men that are fighters. I knew one man told me, he said, the first thing I do when I get in a fight is poke the guy in the eye. The first thing I do. Pretty bad situation. I mean, don't try it, but I mean, it's a part of a raven and part of an eagle and part of and they disable their victim right away. And but he said, the eyes that mock his father, despise his mother, the ravens of the valley shall pick it out. They're talking in kind of allegory of what will happen to you if you rise up against your parents. And I would have an idea now, being an old man, an old parent, that goes a long ways, not only when you're living at home, but when you get out of home and you attack your mother and your dad and curse them, do despiteful things to your mother and dad, that sooner or later your eyesight will be taken out and you'll be destitute with any kind of power of vision, and you will stumble in the darkness yourself because you have disobeyed your mother and dad. There is a law in the Bible. It's called the law of retribution. And all of us, every one of us, have to pay. Many, many parents have suffered because of a wayward son or a daughter, with a rebellion in the home, but also the fact those parents grieved over the loss of the communication with their child. And ever since those children departed, distress, perhaps even chronic illnesses have come because of the way that a child spoke to their parents. God will see to it that sooner or later the pendulum will swing around and you will be cursed by your own children. What goes around comes around. You will face the same problem that you created for your mother and dad. You will have it created by your children in the days ahead. That ought to sober you up. Whatsoever man soweth, that shall he also reap. Your chickens will come home to roost, and you will have backfire, and because of your attitude towards your parents. I'd be careful how you handle your affairs with your parents. It's serious business in my understanding. Father, thank you for this session. Encourage us now in Jesus' name, amen. I'm going to stop for now. I'm going to let you. Did I say chapter 30?
Yep.
And verse 18. This is sort of a continuation of all of this. There be three things which are too wonderful for me, yea, four which I know not. The way of an eagle in the air, the way of a serpent upon a rock, the way of a ship in the midst of the sea, and The way of a man with a maid, such is the way of an adulterous woman. She eateth and wipeth her mouth, and saith, I have done no wickedness. I would assume that when he's talking about the eagle in the air, that it was wonderful for him to be able to see a bird as large and as heavy to be able to fly. Eagles get pretty big. Somebody reported, maybe a year or so ago, that they saw an eagle up in Alaska that had a 15 feet wingspan. Now, 15 foot would be probably from here, would you say near to the wall? That's a pretty good sized bird. It could take a chihuahua right out of the backyard of somebody's house. And more power to the eagle. But he was kind of taken up with these four things. Not only eagle in the air, but also a serpent that kind of glided over the rocks, slippery rocks many times. He said that he was amazed at a ship, how that it could plow through the sea and leave no track behind it. And the power of an adulterous woman over her victim. She destroys the man and then declaims that claims that she has done nothing wrong at all. It really caused him to wonder about the eagle with his eye, that he could see the prey. You know, most eagles build their nest high, probably the highest that they can. I was with Chris the other day. It was up at Houghton Lake. And there must have been 20, 25 eagles' nest right in a clump of trees. And all of them were right up. And I didn't, my eyes are not that good, but he saw eagles up there sitting on the eggs in the nest.
Wow.
But there's, usually they like to go up in the crags of the rocks, as high in the mountains as they can. And they are can see for miles any movement of rabbits or whatever, mice or whatever it might be that their prey would be, and then swoop down upon them. I was sitting at my kitchen table, a couple of years ago, and it was in the summertime. I have glassed-in back porch, a glass back of my house. All of my back of my house pretty well is glassed in. And I just saw something out of the peripheral of my eye, just boom, like this. And it was a hawk. And back by our garden fence, there was 2 or 3 sparrows sitting on like a railroad tie that kind of formed a little flower bed around the fence in the backyard. And that hawk come in there so fast. That little sparrow didn't see him coming, and the sparrow started to fly. He knocked it right down with his wing and pounced on it just as fast as that kind of dune bug, like I said. And it seemed like to me, it was fascinating. I'd never seen anything like it in my life. And it was a wonder and a quandary to this writer of this, talked about that snake being so sneaky, so silent and so subtle, so smart and so swift. Talking about that ship that would, I don't know if you've ever seen ships in the ocean. But I'm talking about 3,500 years ago, before there were ships like we have now, we have metal, steel ships, but I'm talking about wood ships. How that those ships, it seemed like they'd sink. They're loaded down with wheat or grain or commodities, taking them from one port to the other, sailing out there in 14, 20-foot waves. You'd have to be some kind of a navigator and a captain of a ship to be able to keep those babies afloat. And it was a marvel. It is to me still, how that they can, well, how they used to at least, before radar and before radio and all these other communications, how that they could set their sails and go in a direction sometimes against the wind. Our chiropractor that we go to, he likes to sail. And I said to him one day, I said, how in the world do you fly? How do you sail against the wind? Well, he said, you don't actually, you kind of keep moving back and forth so you get wind in those sails, but he said sometimes the sail will act like a suction, and it'll just suck your boat right along. I wouldn't understand all that stuff, but to the writer of this portion of the Proverbs, he's saying it's just a wonder to me how these ships can sail and how that this men can be taken with a maiden. You know how a man can slick a woman. Now there's nothing wrong, now let me clear this, there's nothing wrong with a man courting a woman, there's nothing wrong with that. But he said some men are just like snakes on rocks. Some more of them are like eagles with their eyes. And some of them are like women who want you to commit adultery with them. He said, now there are good boys and there are bad boys. Good girls and bad girls. But I don't think a girl, I've said it many times in our class, because we got several young girls here, wonderful virgin girls. You don't even have the slightest idea of a man with a maid. It's like a snake on a slippery rock. It's like an eagle soaring, waiting for its prey. Men are the aggressors. If it was left up to a woman, probably nobody'd ever get married. But girls can be swept off their feet unless they keep their head. It doesn't take much of a flirtation of a man in their direction. You can fall in love, and before you know it, it's too late to change your mind, because you've already fallen in love. And I want to be careful what I say, but when a man tells you that he loves you, it does not always mean that he loves you. It means that he lusts you. And that is, men are wicked. Women are to talk about that woman being a harlot, that slick men. He just talked about that in our verses, but men are wicked. And they'll tell you just about anything. Have you yield to them? They'll tell you all sorts of things like, well, we can't do this until we get married. Oh, what you don't understand, little lady, is that marriages are made in heaven. You don't need the paper that comes from the courthouse to be married. Marriages are made in heaven. Slick, 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 slick you. I'm telling you, well, if you really, really, really love me, you do what I want you to do. If he really, really loved you, he wouldn't ask you to do something that wasn't right to do. He'd respect you. I'm just telling you, girls, you don't understand this old man. Been around for 100 years. I know somewhat what's going on in this world. Men are wicked, boy, wicked, wicked, wicked. Have to be careful what they say. I'm saying that boys and bad girls, but unsaved girls and unsaved boys, most of them don't see anything wrong with immorality. They don't see it because they don't have the Holy Ghost in them to make them understand. And most girls are weak too. And if you start chasing boys, it's just like a dog chasing cars. It's pretty hard to break them after they get chasing cars. And you get chasing boys, won't be too long before you'll be all messed up in your life. Good girls don't call boys on the telephone. Boys might call you, but girls don't call boys. I know many girls that are afraid that they're going to be passed by and become old maids. And so they'll take a chance and see nothing wrong with furthering themselves. But our public school system is so wicked. It teaches young people that they're animals, not human beings, but all of us are animals. Of course, that comes along with evolution. But when you're taught that you're an animal, you act like an animal. You do what animals do. But when you have Bible understanding, you just don't fool around with unsaved boys or girls. By the grace of God, you be decent and not be deceived. He was telling about snakes, and he was talking about eagles and ships and men with maidens. If you could get the continuity of all of that and make it applicable to your own personal life, it would be a great benefit and a blessing to you. I'm going to read chapter 30 and verse 21, 22, and 23. For there are three things the earth is disquieted. For three things the earth is disquieted, and for four which it cannot bear. For a serpent, I got snakes in my mind again. For a servant when he reigneth, and a fool when he is filled with meat, and for an odious woman when she is married, and a handmaid that is heir to her mistress. He's kind of talking about four obnoxious things, things that bring a lot of restlessness and disturbance. A servant, when he becomes a king, and he has undue exaltation. A person who is not fit mentally, educationally, socially, to become a leader. Who is a leader? it produces a lot of pride and a lot of cruelty, and there's a lot of unnerving comes to everybody. I want to say something so bad, but I'm afraid it'd be misunderstood. But don't ever, people, try to be something that you can't be. I know how the stress goes. I know how it goes, thoughts of this day, that anybody can do anything. But I personally know my limitations. My limitations is Parker Memorial Baptist Church that I pastor. That's my limitation. Nobody called me to be the first pastor of the First Baptist Church of Hammond, Indiana. I wouldn't take it if they offered me the world with a fence around it. I wouldn't take the church. It's not my capacity. It's beyond my capacity. I wouldn't want it. It's not my style. It's not my way of thinking. I'm not involved with easy believism and all the other business that goes along. I don't want it. I wouldn't care for it. If you asked me to be the first pastor of the First Baptist Church in New York City, I'm not interested in that. Find your little niche, what you can do, and then you do that. I know a man, he comes in and out of here every once. He doesn't live here in this town, but he can't preach his way out of a wet paper sack. And yet, he told me one day, he said, Brother Green, you have a lot of commitments, preaching appointments. He said, if you ever get so you can't make it, I'll come and fulfill your job again. I would be embarrassed to have the man go. And that's just the way some people are, though. They feel egotistically that they are the way up the ladder, and they aren't. I don't know how to knock somebody's props out from underneath them. I don't know how to talk to that man. In fact, I try to avoid him as much as I can because he's got such a high idea and he can't even pronounce words properly, hardly. And his thinking is, I don't know, it's beyond my comprehension. But what I'm trying to say is, when a slave, when a pauper, when a nobody becomes a somebody, watch out, because things aren't just supposed to be that way. I think everybody, all you young people you young men that would be interested in pastoring, everybody